Russian President Vladimir Putin says referenda in occupied Ukrainian territories will take place from Friday. Military reserves have been mobilised and that Moscow will retaliate if threatened. Antonio Guterres warns of a winter of discontent over the invasion of Ukraine, inflation and inequality at the opening of the UN's General Assembly in New York.
As winter approaches, Germany moves to nationalize its biggest importer of Russian gas, an attempt to offset potentially crippling supply cuts. Violent protests continue in Iran after a woman was found dead in police custody. Pressure is mounting to investigate how she died.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has confirmed he has signed a decree on the partial mobilization of his military reserves. As Russian troops in the southern and eastern parts of the country are reportedly being pushed back towards the border by Ukraine's counter-offensive, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu says an initial 300,000 reservists have been mobilized. In his announcement Wednesday, Putin also said Moscow will do whatever it takes to defend the country and will not hesitate to use more force.
Our country also possesses various weapons of mass destruction. In some components, they're even more modern than the ones NATO countries possess. And in response to the threat to the territorial integrity of our country, to protect Russia and our people, we will undoubtedly use all means in our disposal. This is not a bluff.
This highly anticipated message comes as Russian-appointed leaders in Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia and Kherson announced that referenda on joining the motherland will take place. Putin confirmed that residents in these occupied territories will be called to vote starting this Friday.
We cannot. We simply don't have any moral right to leave people close to us to be torn to pieces by butchers. We cannot live without answer their sincere desire to define their fate by themselves. We'll do everything to ensure the safe organization of these referendums, for people to express their will, and we will support the decision on their future that will be taken by the majority of the population of the Donetsk and Luhansk Popular Republics, as well as Zaporizhia and Kherson regions.
While the West has slammed any attempt by the Kremlin to annex Ukrainian territory and force residents in the 4 regions to become Russian citizens, Moscow says it is defending the security of these areas and that continued Ukrainian military action in these parts would be considered an attack.
Antonio Guterres has warned of a winter of discontent over the invasion of Ukraine, inflation and inequality. The UN Secretary-General opened the 77th United Nations General Assembly with a speech telling world leaders that the clock's ticking and soon there might not be more time left.
We need action across the board. Let's have no illusions. We are in rough seas. A winter of global discontent is on the horizon. A cost of living crisis is raging, trust is crumbling, inequalities are exploding, and our planet is burning. People are hurting, with the most vulnerable suffering the most.
The UN chief also pointed out that the fossil fuel industry is profiting from the current situation, despite the role it plays in the climate crisis.
Hundreds of billions of dollars in subsidies and windfall profits, while households' budgets shrink and our planet burns. Excellencies, let's tell it like it is. Our world is addicted to fossil fuels, and it's time for an intervention. We need to hold fossil fuel companies and their enablers to account. And that includes the banks, private equity, asset managers, and other financial institutions that continue to invest and underwrite carbon pollution.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine will top the event's agenda. Ukrainian President Zelensky is scheduled to speak this Wednesday despite Russia's opposition.
Nationalizing its biggest importer of Russian gas in an attempt to offset potentially crippling gas cuts this winter. The German government has agreed to inject 8 billion euros into Uniper and buy out the company's Finnish owner. Uniper has been suffering soaring losses since Russia stopped supplying natural gas to Germany, forcing companies to find alternate and often more expensive sources to buy from. Nationalizing Uniper follows Berlin's decision last week to take control of 3 refineries in Germany owned by Russian oil giant Rosneft. The government said the takeover was necessary to ensure energy security. Berlin has justified its actions by calling Uniper a central pillar of German energy supply. The company provides gas to hundreds of German municipalities and many thousands of German homes. Berlin warned that its collapse would have had a Lehman Brothers effect on the German market and likely caused gas shortages across the country. 4 days after an Iranian woman was found dead in police custody, protests across the country show no sign of stopping. Thousands took to the streets in major cities to criticize the government over Mahsa Amini's death. Some of these protests turned violent, with at least 3 people killed. The UN's Human Rights Office has called for an independent investigation into how she died.
Ms. Amini's tragic death and allegations of torture and ill treatment must be promptly, impartially, and effectively investigated by an independent, competent authority that ensures in particular that her family has access to justice and the truth.
The 22-year-old was arrested by Iran's morality police for not wearing her hijab properly. She died 3 days later at a police station where she was being detained. Iranian police have denied mistreating Amini, saying she died of a heart attack. Iran's government says it's opened a probe into her death as well. On Budget Day in the Netherlands, Finance Minister Sigrid Kaag said the government has agreed on a price cap for gas and electricity. She told the Dutch House of Representatives that energy companies have agreed to cap prices for 1 year, starting January 1st, 2023. The cap will apply to a limited usage, which Kaag says covers 60% of Dutch households. Spain's Senate has voted in favor of Finland and Sweden joining NATO, bringing the 2 Nordic countries one more step closer to becoming part of the military alliance. Finland and Sweden's accession must be ratified by Parliament in every NATO member state before they are protected by the Defense Clause. 5 countries have yet to vote, which means final approval could take up to a year. Hurricane Fiona is blasting the Turks and Caicos Islands as a Category 3 storm after devastating Puerto Rico. The U.S. National Hurricane Center says the storm's eye passed close to the British territory's capital island. The premier of Turks and Caicos urged people to evacuate. The storm is likely to strengthen into a Category 4 hurricane as it approaches Bermuda on Friday.
We are just days away from Italy's general election, and this year there are heightened warnings about possible election misinformation, particularly when it comes to postal votes. This video recently appeared on Italian Facebook. In it, a man claims that he received his voting papers from a local Italian consulate in Switzerland. Now, he falsely claims that on his ballot paper, some parties have been deliberately removed, namely parties like Vita and Italexit, Eurosceptic or populist parties that are known for spreading debunked conspiracy theories. However, their absence from the ballot paper is not evidence of election fraud. If you go onto Italy's Consulate General website, you can see that these parties have not been included on some ballot papers because they didn't receive enough signatures to run candidates for overseas voters. And this wasn't just confirmed by the Consulate General, it was also confirmed by one of the parties themselves in a post on Facebook earlier this month. Now, the man in that video also claims that the Italian elections will be rigged because in his ballot paper, he claims he received this, an advertising leaflet from the centre-left Democratic Party. Now, it is true that these kind of leaflets should not be included in the envelopes that are sent to overseas voters. However, in the video, you can see that the man has already opened his envelope before he starts filming. This, therefore, compromises the reliability of what he is saying. We also know that a spokesperson for the Democratic Party has said that these claims are completely unfounded and that the video has been manipulated. Here at Euronews, we've also contacted Italy's Election Commission for a statement on these claims. But in any case, this is not evidence of widespread voter fraud. There is no evidence that any other overseas voters in Italy have received a leaflet from one particular party. These kinds of false claims about voter fraud have previously appeared at elections in Europe in the past few years. And as we approach Italy's election on Sunday, it is likely that more false claims like this will also appear in the coming days.